Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Mind Wars Forum, brought to you by the West Virginia Mind Wars Museum. I'm Taylor, Communications Director for the museum. If you didn't know, the museum is a people-powered grassroots institution that educates and preserves a people's history of the coal wars, a bloody effort to unionize the southern coal fields of West Virginia at the turn of the 20th century. Outside of the museum walls, one way the history lives on is through public art, which is why we have Sassa Wilkes here on the forum today. He is a Huntington-based artist working with the museum on a collaborative mural honoring key figures from the Mind Wars. Before we get into that project, let's get to know Sassa a little bit first. Sassa, you said you're a West Virginia native. What part of West Virginia are you from?
I'm from Barbersville, really close to Huntington. I grew up in Barbersville and kind of went back and forth from Barbersville to Huntington as I was going to college and things like that. But I've always been right here. And right now I live in Huntington.
That's very admirable. And a lot of people like me leave and come back. But you stood your ground, and I really respect that. And
well, I've always been local. I mean, it's always been local to West Virginia within like 20 miles. I've just gone back and forth between those two places in West Virginia. But yeah, I've never lived in any other state.
And when you were growing up in West Virginia, did you feel supported in your journey to be an artist?
Yeah, I think I did for the most part. I grew up with a lot of people who were super crafty. My grandmother was into quilting and gardening and drawing and painting. And actually, every woman in my family that I can think of was a quilter. And my mother was super artsy and always creating something. And yeah, I don't remember, a lot of people have that story where it's like when you say you want to be an artist, there's somebody in your family that's just like, oh, you're never going to make it. And there was conversation around that being possibly a difficult path, but I always felt really supported in my efforts of just creativity in general. I felt like it was kind of a natural thing for me to go towards in my family, and it was always supported by most everybody.
That is really awesome, because like you said, it can kind of be a unique story to have that support, especially like in rural areas like West Virginia. On your website, it says that you work to change the Appalachian narrative. What do you feel like that narrative is, and what do you hope to see it become?
Well, from a personal perspective, if I'm just speaking from my own experience, I have a lot of experience with probably similar to most people around here, being called a redneck and being like, just having a little bit of built-in shame that you don't really know where it came from. Or I didn't know when I was growing up where that came from. It was just kind of like there, like a cloud a little bit. Like I know when we would go on vacation somewhere else or talk to people from other places, there was always this kind of like apologetic feeling about where you're from, or at least the idea that you somehow should apologize about where you're from. Or
if you open your mouth and the minute you say something, someone goes, "Where are you from?"
Yes. Yeah. And there was just always this awareness that we were seen as something different, as like an outsider. And, I can think of times when I have tried to not sound like I had too much of an accent. I know family members have done that. We've had discussions about that. And really, I didn't ever think too hard about why I was even doing that or where the shame of that would come from. I mean, now that I'm an adult and I've started to go back and pick apart my upbringing and the things I learned in general when I was a kid and where certain feelings of shame especially came from. Now that I'm picking that apart, I'm like, oh, okay, that was intentional. Like that was intentionally put there for lots of reasons by lots of people. And that's not mine. And I want to shed that. So I'm definitely in a phase of my life where I'm trying to shed the things that are not mine, that I just inherited or were put on me from some other entity, from some other time. And that's one of them. Like feeling any kind of shame about where I'm from is one of them. I want rid of that. That's not mine.
I really relate to that. Like when I turned 18 and I went to college, I left Appalachia. I thought I'd never return. I hated it. I was bullied in school. I was weird. They didn't get me. And I was like so embarrassed to be from where I was from. And then I lived in the Midwest for a little bit. And the way people talked about West Virginia, the Appalachia, I think that's one of the reasons I moved back, because I was like, they're talking about a place that they know actually nothing about, you know?
Yeah. 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 And when you see the stories that are told about Appalachia by people who are not from here, it's like, wait a minute, that's not how we are. That's not my experience at all. So that's one general narrative I would like to change, is just the really ignorant stereotypes of this place. I'm also trans and queer, and that is a narrative that I want to change as well, because sometimes it feels like that's a weird intersection to be a queer Appalachian, because those things don't feel
We're
like
here.
yeah, we are here. We have always been here, but it's just yeah, there's a feeling, a general feeling, like that fog I was talking about. It's like we don't really know where that came from. It's like, oh, those two things can't go together. Like you can't be trans and be openly trans in Appalachia. You can't be openly queer in Appalachia, but that's not true. And there's a big community of support here, and a lot of people that are doing great things. So that's another kind of narrative I would like to change. And also would really like to change the idea that artists can't make a living in West Virginia, because they absolutely can. You got to be a little bit more creative, but West Virginians are super creative people. Even if people who don't think they're creative, they don't think they're artists or whatever, they're coming up with really creative solutions to things all the time. We reuse and recycle and reimagine things all the time as West Virginians. So I feel like creativity and West Virginia go hand in hand. And I feel like we're all kind of weirdos. I mean, so
Even your average person is a freak. That's why I love it here.
yeah, I mean, you said you got bullied growing up and called a freak, and I got called a freak for this and that, but I'm like, wait a minute, we're all sort of bullied, like in one way or another. So if we could just realize that we're all freaks and embrace that and get along and be creative together, I think that would be awesome. It's very idealistic, but I think it's possible.
Yeah. And speaking of some like community support that maybe people outside of Appalachia wouldn't expect, is your project, The Jewel. It's
Yeah.
something, tell us about that.
The Jewel was an intersection mural, a street mural on 4th Avenue and 10th Street in Huntington that I did. It's essentially a crosswalk, but it's a big giant intersection. So there's 4 crosswalks and then a centerpiece involved. And that was done when I was working with the Huntington Pride Board. And it was a commissioned piece or collaboration between the Pride Board and the Huntington Mayor's Council for the Arts at the time. It was completely funded by private residents in Huntington that just really wanted to see that happen. We immediately funded for it because people were so excited about it. And it is just a giant rainbow jewel that's in the center of the street with 4 sort of pride flag color themed crosswalks around it. It's been touched up, but it's fading. I mean, as is the nature of asphalt art, it's not forever. So it doesn't look the same now, but the memory of that was incredible. So I designed it. I did a couple different designs for people to choose from. They picked the one that scared me to death because it was the most ambitious. And we created a giant multifaceted jewel template and got there at 6 a.m. and got it all sketched out, and then had hundreds of volunteers come and paint. So it was a huge community organization effort, but we finished it in 11 hours and it was stunning. I mean,
That took 11 hours.
11 hours. We nonstop, did not stop moving. Like people were handing me food so I could eat while I'm walking around. It nonstop. It was crazy. And so well organized and well attended, and the volunteers, everybody just put in full effort, like knee pads, sweating our guts out, painting on the street for 11 hours. And somebody was up on the hotel rooftop sending us pictures every now and then so I could reorient and make sketch changes or whatever if I needed to. And I remember the first time I got the picture of the jewel with its little layered facets on, where it was really starting to look like a jewel, I just bawled my eyes out. I was like, oh my God, that is beautiful. And most artists could probably relate to the idea that things don't ever quite live up to what you expect them to be. So there's always some level of disappointment, or like,
Totally.
at least like, I'll do this different next time or whatever. That time, I wouldn't have changed a single. It was so much better than I would have imagined. And it was because it was such a collaborative community effort. I mean, it looked beautiful, but like the vibes that day in that crosswalk intersection were immaculate. And we finished so early. We had the street shut down for 2 days because we thought it might take 2 days. We finished early. So we left the street shut down the second day and had a big block party, and people came and took pictures, and families had photographers come out and take the most beautiful pictures. So for months after that, I was seeing on everybody's social media these really amazing, beautiful, vibrant pictures that were taken on the jewel. It was just, I mean, I tattooed it gigantic on my shin because I wanted to remember how that day felt. It was incredible.
And what do you feel like it meant to your community too, just to have people coalesce around the theme of pride, and for the city to let that happen? Like we were talking about Appalachian stereotypes. I don't think a lot of people outside the Appalachian region would think that West Virginia would have a big gay jewel, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And we were immediately pretty competitive about it. Like I remember immediately my husband looking up every rainbow crosswalk that he could find in the whole country and being like, this is by far the best one. Like, and it's in West Virginia. What do you think about that? So yeah, it was extremely meaningful. It was like, even before we started, the fact that we just put it out there online and it got publicly funded so fast was so heartwarming, because we were like, wow, this has so much support. People understand how much it means, especially at the time, because that was kind of at the beginning of the latest wave of anti-LGBTQ everything. So it was really cool to know that allies in the area knew how important it was to fund, and then to see the amount of people that came out to paint and how many people told me after that, like, this is incredible. This makes me feel welcome. I mean, no, just me personally, especially if I'm living in a time that feels a little fearful, even seeing a bumper sticker, like seeing a rainbow bumper sticker makes me feel like, oh, I'm not alone. Like there's other people like me. There's people who want to be vocal or outwardly supportive, even enough to put a sticker on a car. Like
it's a brave thing to do.
It is. You know? Yeah. It really is, because you catch a lot of crap for that. So, you know, if I'm going to be feeling like that over a sticker, to walk into like the biggest intersection in downtown and see this beaming jewel that's just gorgeous. It's like, it just feels like I'm welcome. This is people made this happen, you know. And even the fact that it was asphalt art, that like we know it's not forever. It's not. It's something that's going to need touched up if it's going to keep existing. Like it's still important enough to enough people that we made it happen. And countless people told me how much that meant to them and to their kids. So yeah, it was super, super meaningful. It's one of my favorite things I've ever been a part of.
That's so cool. I really love that. And so you've done some public art, and I also want to talk about portraiture. You've done a lot of portraiture too. What is special to you about making portraits?
I really don't know why I've always been drawn to portraiture. I always have. There's something, I think I like a challenge, and that's considered to be challenging. Like there's a ton of people that say, oh, I
try and do self-portraits all the time. It never looks like me. It's always different. There's something about the composition of a face, you know, which you do excellent, of course. But
yeah, it's tricky. I mean, and I think one thing that makes it trickier than other things is that, say you're going to draw a plant or paint a plant, you can do that inaccurately and it can still look like a plant. It can still look like a good plant. You can sort of be inspired by what you're looking at, but sort of take a lot of artistic license and change it, and it'll still feel like what it is, and you can still evoke the feeling of a plant. If you're painting a person, a specific person especially, and you get one little thing wrong, it's not the same as getting a leaf off by 2 inches, because it looks like a really weird, screwed up version of that person. So I think we are just hardwired to look at faces, to interpret faces, to scan faces for expression and emotion, to connect with eyes. And so it feels like there's a lot more at stake when you paint a person. And I think one reason probably that I've been drawn to that too is that going back to feeling like a freak growing up, like I really felt like such a weirdo when I was growing up. I just had a very vague sense that I wasn't like everybody else or something. And it was hard for me, I think, to connect with people. It was hard for me to make myself vulnerable enough to people to connect with them and look them in the eye and really get to know them or let them get to know me, because I just felt so much like an outsider. So I think like studying a face and painting somebody in a way that makes me feel like I was able to capture who they are is another way of getting to know people and getting to understand other people. And it just feels like I imagine journalists who go interview people leave with the same feeling I might have after I paint somebody. Like I feel like I know them in a more vulnerable, kind of intimate way because I've studied them and I was able to capture something about them. So I've always loved it. I don't think it was easy for me. I think now that I've taught enough people how to draw and paint faces, I think I can say it was probably a little bit harder for me than it was for most of the students I've had to pick up. But I was stubborn enough that I just really wanted to get it right. So I just did it over and over and over and over until I felt like I could be pretty quick and effective at it.
I think that was a beautiful way you described it. And one of your most ambitious portrait series was 100 Badass Women. Will you tell us about that?
Yeah, I did that during COVID. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, I wanted to paint her. I had this really uh, disappointed in myself kind of feeling after she died, because I felt this collective sadness about her death, especially among women that I was close with. And I felt that too, but I didn't really understand it and I didn't know much about her. So I just was like, well, that's a shame. I should know more about her life and about who she was and just women's history in general. So I wanted to paint her because, like I said, that's kind of how I get to know somebody. That's how I get close to somebody, or I don't know, just learn about their life or whatever. So I painted her after she died. And that was the first time I had really been drawn to paint something. Actually, that's not true. I painted Tyler Childers right before I painted her. And that was the first time I had sat at my easel for a long time, because I had been sort of, I don't know, in a funk and didn't know what to do. So I painted her and I shared that online, and I shared some things I learned about her as I was painting her, because I listened to some interviews with her while I was painting her. And it was so warmly received that I just thought, like, well, that felt good to paint. Like, I need another reason to paint. And I'd always sort of wanted to do one of those challenges. Like a lot of artists will do a 30-day portrait challenge or something similar. So I'd always wanted to do that. And I was looking at the calendar to try to figure out if I could start that right then. And I looked at the whole rest of the year. And at the time I looked at it, there was like exactly 100 days left in 2020. So I just thought, well, hell, I'll just do it for 100 days, because I was outside of my mind. That was the craziest thing I've ever decided.
You couldn't really go outside anyways.
Yeah, I mean, we were stuck indoors. My studio I had was not really up and running because of COVID. My husband had been temporarily laid off because of COVID. My son was at home. Like, we were all kind of stuck there. And I would never be able to do that dedication to something like that again. That's kind of a thing that could only exist during a time like COVID. But I dedicated myself to painting a portrait a day for 100 days straight. And I did. And they're 11 by 14 oil paintings. I painted for at least 10 hours a day. And then on top of that, I was learning about the person I painted, listening to interviews or having a movie about them or whatever playing on my iPad while I was painting them. So after I got done, I would...
Surprising subjects. Who was one of your more surprising subjects in that series? Someone you hadn't heard of?
Somebody I hadn't heard of. There were a lot of people that I had never heard of, but actually one of the most surprising ones was somebody I obviously had heard of, was Rosa Parks. And that I painted her fairly early on in the project, and it kind of changed the way I was thinking about it, because the story I learned about her growing up was so vastly different from
right. She was intentional.
Yeah, she was like trained. And she was young when she was on the bus, and she was portrayed as this like grandmotherly kind of person. And I listened to interviews with her where she was like, yeah, everybody just said my feet hurt, like, what a bunch of crap. to just be like, oh, it's just this little grandmotherly type lady and her feet hurt. And that was just a way of making her story more palatable to white people.
Right. And that's the kind of narrative, another narrative thing too, that kind of, takes away people's intention,
Very much so. Yeah. To kind of like whitewash a story or just make it sound more tame so it doesn't offend. And it's a horrible injustice to take somebody's life story and just wrap it up in a bow so that other people are going to be okay with it.
And erase the movement along with it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Which is totally related to the Mine Wars. And I mean, all of that is related. It's related to me. When I thought about her, I thought, how many times have I sort of changed my own story that I tell people about myself just to make myself more palatable to them so that I don't offend or upset anybody or make waves or whatever. And that's a bunch of bullshit. Like, that should never happen. And it's really, really sad and it was a lot of the women I painted. That was the case. Like the more famous ones, especially, where I was like, this is not what I was told.
Yeah, I know you painted Frida Kahlo, and she has quite a revolutionary background, that totally, wiped away a lot of times.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. People just kind of erase the parts that they don't like, that feel too strong, especially with women. It's like, well, we like a strong woman, but only in this specific way. And if you get too strong, it's the kind of like predicament that women have in general. There's nothing you can do, right? Like there's nothing you can do that people aren't going to pick on you and say you're too much or you're not enough or whatever. And it's not true. And when I got to the end and I was also very much exploring gender at that point because I wasn't out as a trans person. So I was living as a woman and, I had my whole life, and it's like,
you 100 women and you said, I am not one.
Yeah, and towards the end of it, people had started reaching out to me the whole time saying, you should paint this person and this person. And maybe about halfway through, people started telling me to paint myself. And they were like, if you don't do that, what are you showing little girls? They had really compelling arguments for why I should paint myself. And I agreed that would be kind of cool because I did feel like I was doing something interesting, but that didn't jive with me at all because of gender issues. Yeah. So, and I wasn't ready to say that yet. So I kind of got around that at the end by painting Medusa at the very end of the project. That was the 100th painting. And I painted myself as Medusa. So I used myself as the reference, but I told the story of Medusa, and I talked about how all of these stories of these women, I was kind of going back and rediscovering them and learning it on my own. And the story of Medusa is, you learn it one way and it's not really that way. Like you think of, I was always told she was like this jealous kind of catty. I'm jealous of your hair, whatever. But when I went back and learned about her again, I was like, no,
she was a victim, right?
She was a victim, and she was a badass and a protector of women. I felt relearning it. So I wrapped that whole project up with this idea of like, you don't have to believe what you're told. You can tell your own story. You can reinterpret other people's stories. You don't have to view everything through the lens of this like patriarchal society. You can relearn things how you want to learn them and digest them in your own way. And that's what I was doing. And then a couple years later, that work showed in the museum, and I had come out in the in-between time to some people. So I essentially just stood in the auditorium at the Huntington Museum of Art and told everybody I was trans while there was 100 portraits of women that I painted. It was it was a strange time.
Well, it sounds like, I don't know, it just sounds like really such a cool experience. And so we've talked portraiture, we've talked public art, we've talked narrative, and also collaborative efforts. All of those things come into play with your current project, Solidarity, which will honor the West Virginia Mine Wars and the people who shaped them. Tell us, how you came up with this and what's the process?
I came up with it kind of in the same way that I wanted to paint the 100 women. I felt like at that time when I started that project, I had a lack of knowledge of women's history in general, and I wanted to learn it. And I'm kind of a natural teacher. I've been a high school teacher. I taught at Marshall, and I like teaching other people, and I like learning alongside them. That's kind of the way I teach best. So I just thought I would like to learn more about our labor history in this state. I'd like to learn more about the mine wars, and coal mining in general. I have a lot of coal miners in my family history. My whole family's been very affected by coal mining, but it was something I didn't know much about at all. And I came to the Mine Wars Museum to celebrate Labor Day the year before I started this. So it was just like rekindled my interest in that. And I thought, how cool would it be to learn this alongside people and do it in a way kind of like how we painted the jewel, like collaboratively, have other people actually helping me do the painting of it. So it took a while to figure out how to make that work. And I was working with a wall inside of the West Edge Factory downtown. So I had the size of the space I could use, and I had the interest in the content, and I started looking into what would fit into that, and how to separate it out to have other people help me, and settled on doing 12 portraits of individuals that were key to the West Virginia Mine Wars. And those portraits are split up into 108 pieces each. So how that's working is, like, we started with Mother Jones. So I did a digital portrait of Mother Jones with my iPad, and then I had it printed at 3 feet by 4 feet, which is the final size that she would be. And then we chopped that digital portrait print up into 108 sections, and other people reproduce those sections, and then they come back together in blocks. So the people are working with a little square that has a number on it. They put it on the grid, and her face appears. And all of these portraits are black and white set against a background that's the red bandana. So
I believe you've been joining students at the museum as well on field trips, and allowing students to learn more about these people, and have their work be it's kind of like a community quilt, I guess.
It's very much a community quilt. It's very inspired by quilting. There's a quilter that works in the studio that I work in named Amy Pabst. She's an incredible quilter. I talked with her, and she showed me some historic quilt blocks and things to inspire the background of the mural. So there will be these 12 portraits, but behind the portraits will be all kinds of colorful sections that are very, very quilt inspired. So yeah, it's really, really inspired by quilt making, really inspired by just the solidarity that was shown through the miners' unions during the West Virginia Mine Wars.
There's a lot to learn, and a lot of amazing people. Some people that we'll never ever get to know about, even, and we're kind of lucky to get to know about the people we do.
Yeah, that's the tricky part about doing the portraits, is I got to have a reference to be able to paint the person. And it's kind of like the same thing I ran into when I was painting the 100 women. It's like, I want to paint women who have done really awesome, badass things, but how many women have done that never got documented, And it's a little sad, because you kind of know that you're going to end up just having to go with the people that you have a history about that you can share. And I got to lean towards people who have a portrait that I can work from to share what they look like, since we're doing portraiture. So it's something I really want to invite other people to, as they're working with me, to tell me their family stories, like share their family history, share the things that maybe aren't well known about West Virginia's mining history. Because there's so many people that have stories. They've been sharing them. When I put these portraits online, the comments I get is like, oh yeah, my grandfather worked in this mine and that mine, and I'm loosely related to these people, and it's really cool to hear about that. So I'm hoping we can share a lot of that.
It helps invite conversation, I think.
Yeah, I want that. Yeah, I definitely want that.
And like I'd mentioned, you're working with students. I saw that when you all painted Mother Jones in the West Edge Factory, you had people of all ages there. What does this mean to you, for it to be like an intergenerational educational art project?
I am glad you asked me that, because I love intergenerational work. I don't think there's nearly enough of that. It is so cool. It is, and I notice it every time we work on it. So there's one opportunity people can have to contribute to this mural, is to come to the first Saturday markets at West Edge Factory. I'm set up there every single time with a different portrait for people to paint. And I always notice when there's like a 4-year-old sitting beside a 70-year-old painting. I think it is so cool. It's so cool, because there's just not enough opportunities, I don't think, for people of mixed generations to get together and share stories and just spend time together. I also actually started a community marching band a year ago yesterday, called Hoot and Holler. And one of the big reasons I wanted to do that is,
we gotta live closer. I'd play sax.
Oh, I wish you did too. That would be awesome. It's the most fun I've ever had. It's the stupid amount of fun. And I didn't play any instruments before I started. I just wanted to start it because I wanted to do big puppets. And my husband is the band director. He's the musician. So, but I did start playing bass drum with him. So that's been really cool. But that is like our youngest member's 15, I think, and our oldest one's 74.
That's so cool.
And it's just, and people teach each other. It's really awesome.
Yeah. Because kind of talking about how, a lot of Appalachian people of our generation get to a certain point in their lives where they like try to tone down their accent and like not embrace their culture. And I think by offering these like intergenerational opportunities, it's how you kind of keep the culture alive,
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's interesting for people to share their stories with younger folks. It just doesn't happen enough. So I love providing opportunities for that to take place. And that one you're talking about, field trips. We're working on the portrait of Ma Blizzard right now. And
I thought that's who it was as it was coming together.
Yeah, she looks great. She looks so good. She looks exactly like my great grandmother. But we started that with Ripley High School. So Ripley High School came down, did a tour of the museum, and then helped with her and got about maybe a third of her done. And then Tug Valley High School had a field trip and did the same, and they worked on it. They did a great job. They both did a great job. And this Monday, I'll be taking that portrait to an Appalachian Studies course at Marshall University, and they're going to finish her. So it's just so cool to have this portrait that like kids from Ripley, kids from Tug Valley, and then college students from Marshall all collaborated on this portrait together. And every one of them at the bottom, there's a little row where we have everybody sign. So you can see the signatures of each person that participated in that portrait.
That's special. And it's so cool too, just for those students to get the opportunity to learn about who Ma Blizzard was while they're working on it. Because that woman was wild. She was so cool.
She was wild enough to shoot at.
Who are some other figures that we can expect to see?
Well, so far we've done Mother Jones. We just finished Frank Keeney at the last First Saturday market. Ma Blizzard is almost finished. Ralph Chaplin is on deck. That one is one of my, as a portrait artist, that one is up there as one of my favorites for sure. At the May Day event, which is on May 1st at West Edge Factory, we'll be painting Sid Hatfield together. And I know.
I wonder which picture you chose.
Well, it was tough because I really wanted to do like the smiling Sid because I have a love of gold leaf, and I thought it might be kind of cool to give him gold teeth. But it didn't really fit because I wanted their expressions to all feel cohesive. Not super serious necessarily. I wasn't trying to get like a mean mug.
You didn't want like one wild standout, basically.
Yeah, it felt. And when I put the smiling picture in there, it did feel way different than the others. So I went with one that's a little more straightforward. But it's awesome. I think it's going to be really good. And I'm working in quotes where I can, and it's with the knowledge that when other people paint text, it becomes a little like it doesn't perfectly match up. So the text of the quotes are kind of like a hidden thing. You have to look for it in some of them. So I think that's really fun.
I think that's cool.
Yeah. The other ones, I don't know. I have a list and I'm not sure yet. I'm still working on which ones are going to be painted, but I have a list that I'm working from.
Oh, well, I know it'll be fabulous. Well, you mentioned the May Day event. The museum's involved with that. Our executive director, Kinsey Newwalker, is speaking at it. Our operations manager, Thomas Jude, is playing some music there. I'll just be there. Tell us more about the event.
It's kind of a combination of like a non-traditional gallery show and an event. So every month we have a new gallery exhibition at West Edge Factory. So this will serve as the gallery exhibition, but what will be on the walls will be the pieces that we've finished so far. We're painting this on polytab, which is a mural fabric that you can paint off site and then essentially glue to a building with a special kind of acrylic gel. So it's sort of like a fabric that you work with. So we have these finished ones as like a poster that you can just kind of put up for now before it gets fully installed. So on the exhibition end of it, this is a weird project. If I just describe it to somebody, I'm like, yeah, it's 12 portraits and every one of them has 108 squares. If they've never done anything like that, it's like, what are you talking about? So number one, I wanted to give people a chance to really understand what this project is kind of early on. So they can come, they can see the pieces that we've already finished. They'll have a couple examples of just the digital paintings that have been printed out but not cut up yet, so they can understand how it's working. So in the gallery, we'll have those as examples. And then we have an adjacent venue space that's really large. So out there in that venue space, we'll be doing the painting of Sid Hatfield at the event. So people can come and finish a portrait while they're there, really, really understand it. They can also go down the hall and see where the Black Box Theater is going to be, because this mural will be installed on the outside wall of that. So they can see where the future project will be. They can see the pieces in progress. They can participate in a piece. But also, I just want to celebrate the original kind of Labor Day. Like May 1st May Day was a big thing I always heard about growing up. May Day celebrations. My mom's mom was the May Day queen at one of the celebrations. And so it's just kind of a cool thing to understand the history of May Day. So I'm really glad that Kinsey will be there to talk about the history of May Day and how it ties into the labor movement. I kind of just want to have like a hootenanny. I don't know if
it's called a redneck reclamation, right?
Redneck reclamation, yeah, because all these portraits have that redneck bandana in the background of them, and I want people.
No, they're in the background here.
Yeah, yeah. Just, it's not been that long ago that I even first heard of why the word redneck is used.
Same.
I did not understand that at all. And I felt really cheated when I learned that, because I just thought, man, like that's been used as an insult against me. Hell, I've used it as an insult to other people, and that's so messed up.
That's like the language of the oppressor, like that we can reclaim now. That,
yes, very much.
I do the blogs and stuff for the website, and they I've been reading a lot of the old UMWA journals from the time the Battle of Blair Mountain was going on, and yeah, they just called them rednecks like derogatorily, and that's just something that a lot of people just don't know where that came from.
Yeah, and it's like I mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, that like fog of shame that you don't know why it's there. Like it takes a lot to kind of go in and dissect that and figure it out. But when there's something specific that you can point to, like a word, it's kind of satisfying, because it's like, wait a minute, I've been called that. Everybody in this area has been called that. But why are we called that? We're called that because they wore bandanas during the mine wars to identify themselves to their, like, that's so cool. I mean, not the, you know what I mean? It's just, that's a way more rich, interesting.
I mean, it was an interracial, multicultural, class aligned group of people. And when I first learned that the mine wars existed, I felt cheated of pride that I should have been able to claim. Do I have somebody related to me in the mine wars? I don't know. But it's still, I think it's a point of pride for all Appalachians, really, just to say, because the existence of the mine wars in general is an exact opposite of what those stereotypes that outsiders have.
That's very well said. That's exactly how I feel about it. Like, it's so culturally significant, so interesting, so much opposite of how people would describe this place when they're being really derogatory about it. And it's just been cool for me to take that word back and be like, no, that's not a bad word. That word is actually pretty badass when you learn about what it actually means. So yeah, I want a redneck reclamation is just like exactly like you said, like reclaiming the language of the oppressor, because that does not get to be theirs. That's not theirs to say in that way. That's not what it means. So I want that event to just be that. We're going to have lots of good music. My band will be playing there.
Oh, Sassa's got a band.
The Hoot and Holler Band. We're Hoot and Holler, yeah. Yeah, they're going to play with me, and Thomas and Matt will play. I saw them play at the Bernie rally, and I just loved how they sounded and what they
That was my first time meeting my future coworker. I didn't even
know. Was it really?
He has such an amazing voice, yeah.
Yeah, they're great. They're really great. We'll have poetry. We always do a lot of live poetry there, so there'll be Candy Workman is going to come and read some poetry.
Oh, I love her stuff.
I do too. Her poems like take me somewhere else. So I'm excited to hear what she's figuring out for this event. And I'll be sort of doing a little talk about the project. And I had started a while back writing, I guess there are kind of poems poetically. I'm not a poet necessarily, but I like to write.
Then you're probably a poet.
Yeah, I
Claim
figure
it.
it works. But I've been writing kind of poems to Mother Jones, like letters in the form of letters to Mother Jones. So I'm going to read one of those at the event. And yeah, Kenzie's talk will be educational. My sister's making the best pepperoni rolls in West Virginia for
I'm
everybody
sold.
to enjoy. So yeah,
Remind us the date and the time and the place for that event.
May 1st from 6 to 9 p.m. at West Edge Factory in West Huntington.
Yeah. Gotta be there.
Seriously, I would love to see so many people there. I think it's going to be awesome. We'll get the more people that are there, we'll get this like kind of supercharged portrait that happens, because when tons of people work on that at the same time, it's like you have about 20 minutes where nothing happens, and then all of a sudden you see the pieces coming together and you see the space materialize. So it'll be really cool to see Sid Hatfield come to life and just enjoy community and food and hanging out and good music and learning together, something that I know I was robbed of learning about that when I was in school. So it's really cool to be able to have some kind of educational art around it for sure.
Absolutely. And that kind of ties into, I guess, my final question here. You're educating people of all generations, or at least, or allowing people who already know about this history to interact with it in a different and tactile way. And you're also creating a piece of art that will serve as a piece of education, theoretically, past your lifespan, even.
Yeah.
Maybe. How does that make you feel?
I love it. I think it's awesome. I think maybe it's because I just turned 45. Like I have considered.
I would have never guessed.
I've started thinking like about what you leave behind, and that's crazy. I know I'm not like near death or anything. It's a very dramatic thought at 45, but I am an artist, so I'm allowed to be dramatic. I think I want to leave this place better than I found it. I think that's just a really good rule. And I never would have imagined that I'd be making art that feels so educational. I really never would have imagined that I would be making community art with other people, because I used to feel like I was a loner. And I kind of thought I would just paint in the basement like a freak until I died. But I got the bug because I've realized that what I needed personally was community. And I think what we all need right now, especially, is community. And there's a really cool thing when I do these portraits with people that I get to see, that is at least 3/4 of the people in there. When I'm doing something like I did at the Mine Wars Museum with the high school kids, at least 75% of those kids look like they're terrified. And they're like, I'm going to screw this.
It's really intimidated.
Yeah. They're like, I don't know how to paint a face. Like, we're going to screw this up. And I tell them, like, you don't, like, I've done the hard part. I've simplified it. People are way better at this than they think they are. Just trust yourself, trust the process, go for it. And when people have that moment where they put the piece they did into the grid and they back up and they see how it fits into the collective, it's like, to see that on their face is so cool, because they're like, what? Whoa. Like, I did that. And then they come back and take a picture of the piece they did, and they take a picture of the overall piece, and they're just beaming. Like, and it is an immediate understanding that even if what you have to contribute is imperfect, even if you are what you consider to be unskilled necessarily at that thing, or, you're not really a seasoned artist, or whatever it is that you're contributing, even if you have an imperfect contribution, it matters. Like, collectively, when you back up from it, nobody notices that your little contribution you made was imperfect. They just notice the magnitude of the overall tapestry. And it's like, wow, we never could have done that by ourselves. There was not one person in that room that could have painted that portrait in that time frame, including me, by myself.
It's a great metaphor for community too, that like, if you focus on your one little square too much and all the little things that are wrong with you, instead of looking at like connecting with other people and being a part of a collective, then you can step outside yourself and be a part of something bigger.
Yeah, like what if you hadn't done it? What if you would have let your fear make you? Because some people don't. Some people I ask them to do it at the markets, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not good at that. I'll screw that up."
Oh,
Most people, I talk them into it. I sort of badger them.
yeah, I figured you would.
I do. I'm like, no, you're the exact person who I want to contribute to this because you'll get it. But
Right.
yeah, but when we back up from it and we see it together, it's like, well, what if we would have let that feeling win and none of us would have done this? Like, but look what we did just by trying, and it is an immediate experiential understanding that your individual contribution matters. And I think that goes beyond understanding like, oh, I've contributed to a painting. I think it gives people the feeling that what they have to say matters and what any little action they can take really does matter. And I think we have to do that. We have to step up and take little actions right now, and we have to do it collectively in solidarity.
That's the story of the Mind Wars, right? Nothing could have been done without solidarity. Solidarity forever. I mean,
right.
I think
so it's kind of the only way this could happen. Like it would have been really dumb for me to just be like, I'm just going to by myself paint this stuff about the Mind Wars, because that's not, I wanted the way it was painted to show solidarity. And it absolutely
that's why it's called that, right?
Yeah.
All right, Sassa. Well, I really appreciate you for coming on today. And I appreciate your work in creating community kind of wherever you go. Oh, also, I have one other question. If a teacher is watching right now and they want to have their students involved, how can they get involved?
Definitely have them. They can contact me. If you go to my website, actually, if you just want to email,
iamsassa.com.
iamsassa.com. You can contact me through there. You can also email me at sassawilkes@gmail.com. We will really soon have a lot of stuff that we're actually going to be able to get to teachers if they want to do something in their classroom, because like I said, these portraits exist, but behind the portraits are some very colorful quilted sections. So we've already started making packets that we can get to individual groups, businesses, teachers, anybody that wants anything to do with this can contact me, and we can get you some supplies, and then you can work on this in your own space and time and get it back to me and have it installed in the mural. So definitely reach out if you want to be involved. Also, just pop into the first Saturday market. It's like follow West Edge Factory on Facebook for those events, and you can see when they're going to happen and come and help at the markets also.
Perfect. I'm so glad I remembered to ask that.
Yeah.
Well, once again, thank you so much. Now I'm going to talk to you, the listener. If this talk has inspired you, and how has it not? It's been such an inspiring talk, right? You can support the museum's work by becoming a member. That's at wvmindwars.org/join. This comes with some fabulous perks and your own membership card. Link in the episode description. Also, we're WV Mind Wars on all social media, so keep up with us there and learn more, well, really about everything over on our website, wvmindwars.org. Also, if you're listening to this in podcast format but would like to see our gorgeous faces, watch the video over on the West Virginia Mind Wars Museum YouTube page. This has been Mind Wars Forum. We'll see you next time. Solidarity forever.